Thanks so much for joining us on our streaming service, CBS News Colorado. I'm Michael Spencer, joined by the R's of CBS Sports Colorado. Romy Bean, Rod Mackey, Richie Cozzolino, here to recap the Broncos season. I'm going to take you two to Vegas because when we did this segment at the start of the year, you guys were both spot-ons with your preseason predictions at 8 and 9. Romy, you were optimistic, which is par for the course. You said 10 wins, and I think you can make the argument that if you go back and look at a couple games this season, there was an opportunity for the Broncos to get to 10 wins. That being said, they didn't get there. What were your biggest takeaways from this season?
Well, you know what's funny about that? Sean Payton actually in his end-of-season presser said there are a few games we should have won, we could have got to 10. There's a few games that we could have ended up with 6 wins. And that's very true with this Broncos team. A bunch of games could have got either way. But I think my biggest takeaway is that this team, they showed flashes. They showed that they have the ingredients to be successful. However, what they're lacking is consistency, you know, and the ability to finish big games. And that is kind of the key of a team that knows how to win, that always wins. They showed that they still haven't quite figured out how to do that just yet. And you look at the games like losing to the Jets, Commanders, the Patriots, the Raiders at home, getting swept by the Raiders. All of these games where they couldn't finish, right, in big moments. And that's the mark of a team that has leveled up. I believe that when you look at this Broncos team as a whole, you sit here today, I do think they are better off today than they were a year ago today. However, they still need to make the big leap and start finishing games. I think that's my biggest takeaway. Beyond that, if we really want to deep dive, I still think there's a lot of holes in this roster to fill. The salary cap is going to be an interesting situation. Who's back here? It could look a lot different. They might have to get lucky with some of these young guys and hope they play well. And then, of course, you've got the draft deficit from all of those years. That all affects the future. As far as this year, yeah.
You mentioned a couple things I want to hit on. Richie, I want to come to you here because in our season predictions, you predicted that the Broncos would sweep the Raiders this year.
Yeah, that was a bad call.
It was exactly the opposite, actually. A close loss to start the year and then another loss to end the season, along with a quarterback change in between Game 1 and Game 17.
How am I supposed to predict these
Russell
things,
Wilson started the year. Jarrett Stidham ended the season. Romy mentioned they got some issues they got to figure out, including quarterback. What do you think they do?
Well, if you're talking George Payton and Sean Payton, they say the door's still open for a return of Russell Wilson. Anybody believe that on the couch?
No.
That would just be so awkward.
Can you imagine? The answer to that is no. So I think you have to go to the draft with that first-round pick, 12th overall, because as Romy just mentioned, the salary cap is going to be a nightmare when they move on from Russell Wilson. So you look at who's going to be available. 12 picks into the draft. You might not get exactly who you want. A Michael Penix Jr., a J.J. McCarthy, Ron Mackey's Michigan man. Yeah, go ahead. So I think you're either going to go and get a vet on a minimum deal and get somebody with experience that just can play Sean Payton's ball the way he wants under his system, or you get an exciting rookie because you haven't had a first-round pick as a quarterback in a very long time here. Excitement versus veteran experience. It's one of those two, but you're not getting a star.
It's been a revolving door of quarterbacks over the last several years. It's also, Rod, been a revolving door of coaches. What did you make of Sean Payton in his first year at the helm here in Denver?
Yeah, I mean, it's much like the Broncos. It's some good and some bad. And how much do you give or blame the coach for? How much do you credit or blame the coach for? You know, is it coach, is it team? It's kind of hard to see. One thing that Sean Payton did do that he said he wanted to do with this team is he taught them how to win. He said this team did not know how to win. And that's something we saw because Romy mentioned the way they started those season. You cannot lose to those bad teams at home. Denver did. They were turning the football over. They were getting leads late and then letting teams come back. Well, once they went 1-5 and all of a sudden started fixing all those things, times changed, and they did figure out how to win. Then they went right back at the end to just kind of falling on it. It's unfortunate because, as Richie talked about with the quarterbacks, when you start 1-5, you're like, okay, Caleb Williams is going to be calling Colorado home. And then all of a sudden you go on this great winning streak to almost get into the playoffs, and in a way, it's almost worse. So I would give Sean Payton I would say about a C+. They beat the Chiefs. They stopped a couple streaks. They won on Monday night. They did not beat the Raiders. They did not end that one. They won at SoFi Stadium finally. So they stopped some streaks. They did some good things, but in the end, they missed out on the playoffs again. And then the whole soap opera that happened with the quarterback situation, we can't ignore that because that's an ugly thing right now with the Broncos, especially nationwide. You look at Denver and you're like, wait, how was the situation handled? And the press conference earlier this week with the Paytons and with the coach, with the coach and with Greg Penner, you know, it was kind of an ugly thing in the way this season ended. And I feel better about the way this season was than last season, but I feel worse looking forward to next season than I did at this time last.
So how are we feeling entering this offseason? Are Broncos fans, should they feel positive about some of the things that we saw, or do you still feel like there is still a long way to go for this team to be where Broncos country wants them to be, and that's back in the playoffs, and will they be there next year?
That's a great question. I think that there's, like we said, good and bad. But again, I will double down on I think that they are better off right now, just in terms of stability alone. We have seen so many coaches, so many ups and downs. At least the coaching staff, as far as we know, is probably going to stay as is. I think that's a huge piece. I think that there are games that they're going to win, and they could edge in. Look, do we think they're going to be Super Bowl contenders next year? No, let's not be silly, right? But I do think that they're in a position where they can level up, and I think it's about building around that quarterback, because let's be honest, like Richie mentioned, go get a veteran guy. At that point, why not make Jarrett Stidham your bridge guy? Because what are we going to bring in bring in Case Keenum again, you know? Case Keenum, one of those guys, right? People have talked about Kirk Cousins. I don't know. But I think that you're going to have to build around. So then it becomes, how are you building around? Because they do need more playmakers. They need more dynamic playmakers, dynamic receivers, tight ends. They need to do a little bit with the offensive line, plus a few guys could be gone. So, again, to me, I can't make that prediction until I see what they do in the draft and free agency and how they build around. I think defensively, they should be able to build on what they do. It should be a similar roster.
Now, you mentioned a lot, and there's certainly a lot that they have to do in this offseason. You also mentioned the Super Bowl, and CBS Colorado is your home for Super Bowl 58 coming up on Sunday, February the 11th. You're going to be in Vegas. Quickly, because we've got about a minute left, what can fans expect?
Who knows? No. It's going to be me and Dave Willey, who I went to London with and thought we ran around that town and got everything we could, and we're going to try and effort the same thing for the Super Bowl, hopefully get some Colorado-related content. But I don't know. We are just going to be out and about every single day trying to get as much fun and good content as we can. If you have suggestions, let us know.
We do know this. It will be fun. 10 seconds or less. Who plays in the Super Bowl? Who wins?
You want me to say the Lions, don't you?
No, I'm just saying.
I'll say the Lions because why not?
Yeah.
Give me the Lions and the Chiefs in a rematch of the season opener.
Oh, I like that. Mr. Mackey?
49ers beat the Ravens.
Yeah.
49ers Ravens because of the color scheme, if you know that conspiracy theory is coming true. Yes. And it's the Niners. Kyle Shanahan.
I'm with you guys. I think the Niners and the Ravens in a rematch of the Super Bowl from a couple years ago, and I think the 49ers get it done this year. That is going to do it for your Broncos season recap. CBS Sports Colorado team going to be continue covering all of your favorite teams right here and online on our website, cbscolorado.com.